I remembered this game I used to play. Nobody at school had it. It was like a clone of one of those famous Japanese games. But it was so cool.
As time passes, it's getting difficult to play arcade games. And if you're a SEGA fan, you shouldn't be surprised that the arcade is a majority of their output. So if you don't have a local arcade, playing their library is difficult. And it still is because I barely see these games in the wild. You have to search for them. I was thinking about calling this series Forgotten Gems, but let's think about this. Is something forgotten if there are still people who have remembered it? That's why today, we're talking about obscure SEGA arcade games. Part 2, let's get into it! What's up, Sonic Expo Dallas? It's aliens versus humans in an all-out war for the Earth. Welcome to Alien Front. Blessed by the good old folks at AM1, aka WoW Entertainment, this is an 8-player competitive tank shooter where the military fight off the aliens in the conquest for Earth. A simple premise that has been done before, however, it's got that SEGA control and feel, and is an addicting arcade game. Players choose between the military and Triclops factions, have an option of selecting 3 vehicles, then go and battle it out to protect the Earth or conquer it. Alien Front bears a lot of similarities to Namco's Tokyo Wars, which it was inspired by, but the big standout feature was the ability to choose between humans and aliens. During development, the choice to play as aliens didn't come until someone suggested that as a concept to distinguish against Tokyo Wars, other than the destructible environments. Art director Geraldo Springg told the team,
I probably would never play as the military, not if you're giving me weird vehicles and cool, interesting technology that I haven't seen before.
Alien Front was a collaboration between the Japanese team of SEGA AM1 and the former American team and employees of Acclaim's arcade division, who worked on Magic the Gathering Armageddon. That game wasn't received well, and is one of the rarest arcade games of all time due to how many machines were actually produced. Literally like around 4. This ragtag crew created a cool game that SEGA, being SEGA, somehow didn't know how to market. But it did very well despite everything fighting against it. During its run, it was actually making more money than Star Wars Racer Arcade. And when it was being demoed, it was one of the most standout arcade games at E3. Despite being stashed at the back of the corner of SEGA's booth, almost completely obscured by a few arcade games, according to Jeff Gertzman. Unfortunately, the arcade version only came out in Japan, but the US and everywhere else got a Dreamcast port with a campaign mode for both factions. Both campaigns are unique because they make different UI elements for their briefings, but they clearly didn't balance the game itself properly because some of these missions could get hard as hell. In the arcade mode, every time you kill an enemy, you get your health back, some time for kill streaks, and can upgrade your machine with secondary weapons. This creates and encourages strategic play and keeping yourself alive to rack up streaks to play longer. That's how the arcade mode is. But in the campaign, enemies do not drop health pickups and can overwhelm you easily with multiple tanks with upgraded weapons that will decimate your vehicle if you just look at them the wrong way. So you really gotta plan out the missions if you want to survive. You can get pickups from your base and heal that way, but by the time you get there, you already wasted a minute or so, and don't forget, some of these missions are timed. Also, most likely the tank that was shooting at you is still chasing you, and by the time you get there, you're dead. What was also cool about Alien Front Online, the Dreamcast port, is that it was one of the few games to use the SEGA Net, and you could take the battle online. Every copy of Alien Front Online came with a microphone so you can also voice chat with other players. Of course, this was the early days of online gaming, and right before Xbox hit the scene like 10 months later with Halo Combat Evolved. You gotta remember the Dreamcast was a pioneer for its time. There were even plans to also allow Dreamcast machines to play online with the arcade machines too. But of course, that didn't fall through due to the arcade version not having a US release. But honestly, the game is still fun to play all these years later. I love how the tanks control in this game. It isn't realistic like other tank games, you just go. Reminiscent of how at the time, many other good card combat games control and play. It sets a fast pace to the match because you're just wanting to get in and blow up as many machines as possible and survive the onslaught. It's addicting fun, even if the arcade mode never ends and just cycles between the same few maps. That's what the online and the campaign mode is for. Luckily, since this game was released on the Dreamcast, it's pretty easy to find legally. However, if you still want to play online somehow, you do have to do a lot of tinkering because the servers have been shut down. And before I move on, Alien Front never got a sequel. But there was supposed to be another Alien Front game planned for another console. Get this, it was for the N-Gage. Yeah, Sega supported the N-Gage a good amount, and Alien Front was another game they were planning to have on it. Sadly, the release was cancelled, but you can still find and play the unreleased prototype of it online. While the concept wasn't fully original, this combination of US and Japanese devs created an addicting, unique, and invigorating multiplayer experience that is still worth checking out today. To quote the back of the box from Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, battle to save the world or conquer it.
Route 66, the Great American Road, a reminder of the glory days of yesteryear. 2,448 miles of highway, stretching all the way from Chicago to LA.
There's no driving like truck driving. This is 2003's The King of Route 66. Developed by the good old folks at SEGA AM2, this is the sequel to 18-Wheeler American Pro Trucker. King of Route 66 is the same premise of the first game. You're a truck driver and make deliveries to your destination. There is a rival truck game that is trying to make those deliveries first and rule the streets, so you have to put a stop to them as well. It is never that simple when it comes to this series. In the King of Route 66, there is a story mode, as this old noisy duck tells us to chase out these rival truck gangs. In very unsafe truck driving, which would kill someone if they did this in real life. Our truckers are some of the same from 18-Wheeler, but two of them go under different names. We got Texas Hawk, Highway Cat, Iron Bull, Soul Man, and 18 years before his Yakuza debut, Ichiban. At home. With these drivers, you will travel across Route 66 making deliveries, racing rivals, and taking down the evil Tornado Corporation who wants to rule over Route 66. Route 66 expands on 18-Wheeler's mechanics. In the original, the only way to gain speed was to use a slipstream and hopefully catch up to the rival at the near end. Here, the pathways are shorter, you given nitro canisters, and you don't have to beat your rival technically to progress. You're driving very tight cities and narrow roads, yet your truck can take a lot of damage. The good old folks of Sega didn't want this to be realistic, it's just silly and quirky American themes from the view of the Japanese. If you ever played games like Dead Rising and see the themes of Americana through that, you're most likely gonna feel welcome here. Through this makes the cutscenes and voice acting hilarious for both campaigns. You'll also get to choose your load, and there are also some mini-games you play during deliveries for extra points, like placing the payload on the truck. Okay, I'll just stop with the voice. Secondly, the game is less punishing than 18-wheeler because, oh my god, that original game is hard. I played the original game on easy and struggled just to complete one playthrough on PS2. It is why I prefer the King of Route 66 way more. This is one of those cases where I recommend the PS2 version over the arcade version. Since the original arcade release is a Naomi 2 game, it is playable via any sort of Dreamcast emulator you can find out there, but the PS2 version is the way to go. Sure, there are a few differences between the arcade and console versions where the arcade version has a tag-along system. However, the console version expands upon the main arcade game and adds new modes, lore, and dialogue to all the things you're doing. Like, the arcade story mode was expanded and has a lot more things to do and a lot more routes to take. There's also other modes like new mission modes and a special shout out to the Queen of Route 66 mode. You can think of this as a heart attack adjacent mode where you travel across Route 66 to each state and fulfill special missions by the state's girls. And then you get to get a reward and go on a date with that queen. Yep, this is Trucker Persona, but unlike the Jonkler, you don't get consequences for dating every single one of them. I don't want to spoil too much about this mode because each one of these scenes is worth viewing by themselves. But the girls have their own dreams and special quirks. You will learn about them from their dialogue and their endings. Admittedly, has this mode not aged well, where you're collecting all these queens, aka women, across the Route 66, doing their activities to earn them as a reward? Yes. Is it fun? Yes. This is a product of its time. And honestly, it is worth it alone to check out what this content-rich PS2 game has to offer. It's definitely not becoming my personality, but it's goofy, quirky, and explicitly American. That is the King of Route 66.
This is noisy gun!
Thank you, Texas Hawk. You're the real king of Route 66.
Also, Game Apologist did a video on this game, so if you want to go check out that, go check out that. It's one of his actual best videos, so please go check that out and play this game. Obligatory pun about mountains and motorcycles that I can't think of. This is Manx TT SuperBike, based on the mountain road races of the same name and developed by SEGA AM3 and AM4, produced by Tetsuya Mitsuguchi. This game runs on SEGA Model 2 hardware, just like Daytona USA a year before it, and rather than being based on a stock car event, it's based on the Isle of Man motorcycle races. Now, you might have seen or heard about this game before, and it's because Cybershell beat me to the punch talking about this game. God damn it! Design-wise, Manx was impressive for its time. It was praised for the arcade cabinet and game simulating real-life motorcycle racing, since most games at the time forced you to put your feet on the ground to control the machine. However, in Manx, the way the machine was designed allowed for players to lift their legs off the ground and use their body weight to control the bike. They also licensed and reached out to Honda for direction on the game's sound design, even going back to using the SEGA Model 1 soundboard that had 4 outputs to simulate how motorcycles sounded. And due to Daytona being a hit at arcades, they implemented 8-player multiplayer if you connect enough machines together. The game only has 2 stages, both based off the real-life Isle of Man TT races. The game pulls from how SEGA Rally plays in regards to skill. Consistency and keeping up speed plays a key part in the gameplay, as the racers are fast and ruthless. And the game's soundtrack, they're rocking out here. When you're playing Manx even today, it's exhilarating. The immersive motorcycle, in combination with the sound, music, and good-feeling SEGA arcade gameplay, just blows you away. And of course, since the developers have respect, and as a nod to the Isle of Man, if you press Shift Up, shift up, shift down, lean the bike full left and lean the bike full right, brake and accelerate, you can unlock sheep mode, where all the motorcycles get replaced with sheep. And yes, they composed an entirely original track for this mode. Manx TT SuperBike was innovative for its time for its ingenious arcade machines, attention to detail and sound design, and addicting and fun gameplay. It was ported to Sega Saturn and Windows under Tantalus software. Both are pretty decent arcade conversions with downgraded graphics, but having more features and everything the original game offered, with the Saturn version in particular being impressive for its time. It's still a pretty neat game. While it's more realistic in nature, it still has the fun, innovation, and inventiveness you would see out of Sega's arcade output. Interestingly, Sega would reuse the advanced tech for another obscure arcade game that some of you might have already played.
Motorade
Was released as an upgrade kit to Manx TT SuperBike, and what an upgrade it is! In a futuristic world where motorcycle racing is on other planets, futuristic racers combat to see who is the best in Motorade. Gameplay of Motorade features the controls of Manx. However, in addition to the bike, every rider has a weapon, boost on their machine, and can use those abilities to attack other racers. Whether it be close quarters fisticuffs, knocking people off with a giant thingy-majig, or throwing your weapon 100 meters forward to decimate your rival. There are a total of 5 stages, or planets, and your performance in each race depends on where you go, and how much extra time you have. Yendas is a perfect first stage with that gruesome futuristic tone that makes you lock in.
3, 2, 1, go!
From your performance on Yendas, depending on your placement in the race, it will take you to a different planet. You have a total of 4 racers to choose from, and their differences gameplay-wise is more interesting to talk about story-wise. You know, some characters have better acceleration, some characters are heavier, hit harder, so on and so forth. I mean, they do all have an ending, but I already wrote more about how uninteresting they are story-wise in this paragraph than their actual endings do so. Motorade is even more addictive than Manx due to its adaptive difficulty and combat mechanics. You're not just going fast, you're duking it out in a death race. It also throws you a bone if you end up placing somewhat good in your races, unlike Manx. Of course, instead of just going for the cup, you can just practice the tracks themselves as well, so it gives you more options to figure out how to master the game. Better yet, like previously alluded to, if you want to play this game, it has been officially re-released in Judgment and Lost Judgment, where you can go to the Sega arcades and play the game for yourself. No arcade excursion or emulator needed. Of course, when you can, please support the official release. Either way, Motorade as a game is objectively better than Manx, and that's just due to the developers getting an idea with the tech they already had and flexing it out to an even more exciting experience. While Manx was all about the tech and innovation Sega could offer, Motorade was about the flair our good old folks at Sega can offer.
Winner!
I won, but I still can't find what I'm looking for.
Game over!
Don't crash on me.
Don't be self-absorbed. Come on, let's go!
You've got a powerful weapon with SEGA's Golden Gun. Developed by SEGA of China, this is a rail shooter that is heavily rooted in Chinese mythos and is built on the basis of the House of the Dead series. SEGA's Golden Gun runs on the ring-wide hardware. However, it reuses House of the Dead 4's assets and sounds. You will see and hear the same sound effects, animation of characters, and even some recolored House of the Dead 4 enemies show up. It is a completely different game, being inspired by Chinese mythology and architecture, and being absolutely goofy with it. Gameplay in Golden Gun is similar to House of the Dead 4, but you're rewarded for consistently killing enemies and racking up a combo without taking damage. The more accurate headshots you get, the higher your score is. Certain enemies also have weak spots because they either have armor, and unfortunately, this game is more linear than the House of the Dead games. You can select what stage you go to first, and then you're set on a particular path until the end. There are no alternate pathways to find like in House of the Dead, or different stage types like House of the Dead 3, the first House of the Dead game to feature a stage select. During the game, you can find a merchant whom you can exchange score with for bonus upgrades and items. The upgrades can be faster reloads, more damage, a temporary weapon, and even the merch asks for an extra credit for more score. And if you didn't upgrade, I'm pretty sure you can rack up the high score in this easily, but you won't get the secret ending. Upon revival, you do get an extra upgrade, so this game is very credit hungry and rewards you for spending money in it. Funny enough, this is actually one of the easiest rail shooters I've ever played, so I'm not even sure if you need the upgrades. However, they are useful for that reason to make the game easier, and for its players to spend more money. The bosses, while I like their designs, each being based off famous people from Chinese mythology, are terribly designed, unfortunately. Out of all the House of the Dead games, these are my least favorite bosses. And it's not because they're hard, but if you ever played rail shooters like Sega's Let's Go games, this game has the Circles of Doom. Now, the Circles of Doom can be designed well. Just look at Jurassic Park: The Lost World by Sega. From how the game is programmed, my shots miss the hurt box because the circles themselves don't count as a hit, as the weak spot will only register if you hit the hurt box on the model, and the circle only acts as a guide. This is Rail Shooter 101. Communicate properly to your player what does and does not count as a hit. If I'm trying to hit a moving tail, don't put a giant circle of nothing focusing on the tail. Bosses also do not properly reset back to neutral. Rather than making a reset animation or cleverly hiding it with camera tricks, bosses will just flat out disappear and then reappear on camera back to their neutral state. Like seriously, we figured out this tech in the 90s, man. But despite all my complaints, I still like this game for what it brings to the table. House of the Dead is known for its awful but charming voice acting, and that's mostly because you had Japanese people directing English actors in Japan, which was super common for the time. SEGA Golden Gun, on the other hand, was recorded in the Philippines by actors who don't have English as their first language. And it makes House of the Dead's voiceover sounds like Shakespeare in comparison. This is Golden Gun's charm, as the interactions between player 1 and player 2 sound incredibly awkward, and it makes it hilarious when they're bantering with each other by cracking jokes and trying to sound cool.
They're stupid. They're trying to chase us.
Say bye-bye to 3,000 years of history.
Look, I'm attracting beautiful girls.
Not again.
The soundtrack is also a bop, mixing techno with Chinese instruments and themes. By the way, Like I previously said, our high school students who are our protagonists don't even have names. They were in a museum, some police guy gave them golden guns, and they end up completely fighting off the Chinese creatures and zombies. Oh yeah, this isn't canon to House of the Dead, it's zombies, I guess. I will be going into spoilers here, but the final level is probably one of the most ridiculous, awesome, and anticlimactic things you will ever see for an arcade game. If you don't want this to be spoiled, skip to this timestamp, then go play the game for yourself. 3, 2, 1. So throughout the game, there's this man in a white bodysuit with a flaming red hood who tests your skill. He even makes funny noises when you shoot at him a lot. After you've gone through all 4 stages and head to the subway for the final stage, he comes in with the car from House of the Dead 4, driving on the subway tracks, tells you that he is the Monkey King and that you have to put a stop to the Dark Emperor. And where do they have their final battle? The SEGA building. In this final fight, we climb up SEGA Shanghai's building and fight the Dark Emperor as Mr. Daytona himself. Takanobu Mitsuyoshi's god-tier voice carries you to the goal in Chinese. Dude, it's absolutely awesome. And then the game ends after you beat the Emperor, and Monkey King is like, good job. The game also ends with Player 1 and Player 2 being happy they defeated the monsters, and the first thing they do is run to the arcade and go play House of the Dead. I'm not even joking about this.
You fool! It was exciting! Well, let's go to the arcade and play House of the Dead then.
Never change, SEGA Golden Gun. SEGA Golden Gun isn't the best SEGA rail shooter, but its charm and uniqueness makes it memorable for those who have played it. Despite its shortcomings and annoyances, there is a strong, beating heart with this game, and I have a giant smile on my face every time I play it. And that's exactly what this series is about. Of course, we're gonna discover incredible games and innovative games, but also the weird and passionate ones will always stick out. And you can't deny that all of these games have a burning soul behind them.
Sleeping World, my burning sound， 这将是我们最终的战斗。Sleeping World, my burning sound， 他们肩膀还流淌着血。Sleeping World, my burning sound， 为了正义和光明的来到。Sleeping World, my burning sound， 流淌着你沸腾的血。为了明天黎明的曙光。